With a pivotal game against the Ravens looming, the Browns are staring down a defining moment, and not just on the scoreboard. The conversation inside the organization is shifting. Despite public backing for Dillon Gabriel, G. Bush's insider access has revealed a more complicated picture. Browns players quietly pushing for Shedeur Sanders to see the field. Mary Kay Cabot's firm denial of this sentiment now feels less like journalism and more like damage control.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
That upcoming game isn't just another matchup. It's a test of the Browns' long-term strategy. Will the coaching staff stick with a faltering system to avoid controversy, or finally acknowledge what players are saying behind closed doors? The outcome could dictate not just who starts at quarterback, but whether this team leans into change, or clings to appearances. The Cleveland Browns are on the verge of a quarterback disaster, not because of poor play alone, but because of the lies, spin, and silence surrounding the entire situation. What started as a routine media update from Mary Kay Cabot, a respected voice in Cleveland sports, turned into one of the most exposed narratives in recent memory. When she stated definitively that no Browns players favored Shedeur Sanders over Dillon Gabriel, the reaction was almost muted at first. It sounded official. It sounded team-sanctioned. No support for Shedeur? Fine. That must be the truth, right? Wrong. G. Bush came forward with hard proof that shattered that claim into pieces. Not vague sources. Not word is rumors. He dropped receipts, actual messages from players inside the Browns locker room saying exactly the opposite of what Mary Kay had reported. These weren't just offhand comments or mild curiosity. These were players calling for Shedeur Sanders to get a real shot. Not because of hype. Because of what they're seeing. Because of what's not happening with Dillon Gabriel under center. So now the Browns find themselves in the worst position possible. Exposed, unprepared, and unwilling to acknowledge the growing divide within their own building. And let's not get it twisted. The issue here isn't just about two quarterbacks. It's about trust. It's about who's really calling the shots and who's being silenced. G. Bush's report didn't just challenge a media narrative, it revealed something far more dangerous. A team culture more committed to managing optics than listening to its own players. Because the moment you have athletes reaching out in private to get their message out to the public, you've already lost the room. This isn't frustration bubbling up. This is frustration spilling over. The organization had an opportunity to stop this before it snowballed. After G. Bush dropped the messages, anyone from the Browns front office could have stepped in and said, "Okay, some players are pushing for Shedeur. We're aware. We're discussing all options." That would have done it. That would have calmed the storm, maybe even reset the narrative. But instead, nothing. No response. No correction from Mary Kay. No public acknowledgement from coaches. Just silence, and the longer that silence stretches, the louder it gets. Because here's what that silence says to the fans. We don't care what the players think. It says, we're not interested in transparency. It says, we've already made our decision and no amount of internal pushback is going to change it. And that's the problem. It's one thing to have a quarterback competition. It's another to pretend one doesn't exist while the building is quietly begging for it. Because make no mistake, what G. Bush exposed isn't a fluke. It's not one rogue player sending a text out of frustration. It's multiple players voicing the same concern. Dillon Gabriel isn't getting it done, and Shedeur Sanders deserves a shot. And they're right to ask that. The Browns' offense has been mediocre. The team is underperforming. Gabriel isn't playing like a locked-in franchise QB. And when your season starts slipping away, you reevaluate. That's football. That's what good organizations do. They don't dig in and double down on a losing plan. They adjust. They test. They listen. The Browns aren't listening. They're managing. And there's a difference. They're managing public relations. They're managing messaging through reporters. They're managing fan expectations through silence and canned responses. But inside that locker room, there's no managing the truth anymore. The players know what's going on. The fans know it now too. And if the coaching staff continues to pretend everything is fine, they're not just going to lose games, they're going to lose the team. It's already happening in slow motion. Every bad throw by Gabriel is now a lightning rod. Every stalled drive turns into a question. Would this look different with Shedeur? Every player who said something privately is watching, waiting to see if their voices get erased or respected. That's the fire the Browns lit when they let Mary Kay's claim go unchecked. It's not just that the statement was wrong, it's that it erased the locker room entirely. It made it look like no one inside the building had any doubts. And that lie is now costing the organization. Because when players see their opinions publicly denied, they don't forget. And the fans? They're not dumb. They see the difference between a media narrative and what's really happening on the field. They're watching Gabriel struggle. They're watching Shedeur sit. And they're asking the obvious question the team refuses to answer. What are you afraid of? Are they scared Shedeur isn't ready? Or are they scared he is? Because if Shedeur gets on the field and plays well, the narrative shifts instantly. Suddenly, it's not about development anymore. It's about, why didn't they do this sooner? It confirms the players who were pushing for him. It exposes leadership's unwillingness to pivot. And it opens the Browns up to even more criticism than they're facing now. That's what this is really about, control. The team is trying to control when and how Shedeur enters the spotlight. But the players already kicked that door open. And now the spotlight isn't waiting. It's glaring down on a coaching staff that looks stubborn at best, disconnected at worst. The Ravens game isn't just a test for Gabriel, it's a test for the entire front office. If Gabriel plays well, maybe they get to hit pause on this controversy. But if he plays poorly? If the Browns lose badly? That's it. The conversation becomes a roar. The support for Shedeur goes from silent DMs to full-blown headlines. And the Browns will no longer be able to hide behind phrases like, "We're not there yet," or "He's still developing." The pressure to make a move will be undeniable. And if they still don't act? That's when the locker room breaks. That's when you start hearing unnamed players in press conferences giving vague answers. That's when the division becomes public. That's when the trust officially runs out. Because this isn't about picking one quarterback over another anymore. This is about a team that refuses to admit what its own players are saying behind closed doors. And the longer the Browns try to silence that, the louder the fallout will be. Let us know where you stand. Should Shedeur get his shot after what G. Bush revealed? Is the team risking more damage by clinging to the current narrative? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like this if you're tired of the scripted pressers, share it with someone still defending the team's silence, and subscribe for real talk as this situation keeps unraveling, because one way or another, Shedeur's name isn't going away. And neither is the truth. At this point, the Browns can't even hide behind the scoreboard anymore. The team's record is weak. The offense is flat. And the quarterback they keep backing, despite mounting internal pressure and external frustration, has become the symbol of a front office that won't budge, even when the wheels are coming off. This isn't just about a mid-season quarterback decision. This is about identity. The Browns had a chance to prove they were a franchise that listens, that evolves, that actually responds to its locker room and the product on the field. Instead, they doubled down on narrative control, locked the doors, and threw away the key. And now they're stuck with it. Every time Dillon Gabriel walks onto the field with full organizational support behind him, and delivers another forgettable outing, it makes their silence louder. Their credibility weaker. Their locker room angrier. Because the question is no longer, why is Shedeur Sanders on the bench? The question is now, how far is this team willing to go to protect a bad decision? And let's not get lost in the media drama either. Mary Kay Cabot made a claim that no players supported Shedeur over Gabriel. That was a statement that served one purpose, to shut down a growing debate before it became unmanageable. And then G. Bush lit the match. He didn't speculate. He didn't editorialize. He showed direct proof that her claim was false. Players were speaking up. Players were texting him directly. Players were giving voice to the same question fans had been asking for weeks. When is Shedeur going to get a shot? That proof shattered everything the Browns were trying to sell. That this was a team on the same page. That Gabriel had the full backing of the locker room. That Shedeur was a non-factor. Wrong on all counts. Now this has snowballed into something bigger. It's not just a personnel controversy. It's a cultural indictment. Because it proves that the organization's carefully curated image doesn't reflect what's actually happening behind the scenes. This is a team trying to play politics instead of football. And the locker room knows it. And the fans? They're done waiting for the truth. Because when your team is losing and your quarterback is inconsistent, and your most promising rookie hasn't even been given a chance to take a meaningful snap, people start to wonder what the team is really building. Is this about winning? Or is it about saving face? Because if it was about winning, Shedeur would have had a look by now. At least a series. At least some kind of real evaluation beyond practice reps and sideline claps. But what we're seeing is fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of the noise. Fear of admitting they might have backed the wrong guy to start the season. That fear is now controlling the decision-making. And you can feel it. The team's media presence is locked down. Players aren't speaking on the record. Coaches are deflecting questions. Every press conference feels more like a PR crisis meeting than a football discussion. And all the while, the on-field product continues to stall. This is where bad culture takes root. Because when an organization starts choosing control over truth, it pushes people away, players, fans, even the media figures who once gave them the benefit of the doubt. That's why what G. Bush did mattered. He forced a conversation the team didn't want to have. He gave the players a voice when the official narrative had shut them out. And now there's no going back. Even if Gabriel has a great game, even if the team finds a temporary rhythm, the damage is already done. We know what's been said behind the scenes. We know not everyone is buying what the team is selling. We know Shedeur has internal support. So the only real question left is, what now? Do the Browns hold the line and hope this story dies down? Do they wait for another injury or another blowout loss to finally give Shedeur his chance? Or do they actually respond like a functioning, self-aware organization and say, okay, we hear you. Let's open this thing up. The answer will define the rest of their season. Because if they don't act soon, the internal frustration will only grow. One anonymous message becomes two. Two turn into leaks. Leaks turn into dysfunction. And the Browns will find themselves in a full-blown collapse, not because of talent, but because of pride. And for what? All to protect the idea that Dillon Gabriel was the right guy. All to keep Shedeur Sanders out of the conversation until it's too late to matter. If the Browns aren't careful, they're not just going to waste a season. They're going to waste the respect of their players and the patience of their fan base. And for a team that spent decades trying to rebuild credibility, that kind of loss is bigger than anything that shows up on a scoreboard. At this point, there's no spinning it. No salvaging the messaging. No trust the process speech from the coaching staff is going to clean this up. The Cleveland Browns are staring directly into the mess they created. Not because they lost a few games, not because Dillon Gabriel has underperformed, and not even because Shedeur Sanders hasn't taken a snap. No, this storm is their own doing. And it all started the moment they decided to cover up what was really happening inside the locker room. They didn't just back Gabriel, they tried to erase Sanders from the conversation entirely. That was the play. Lock it down. Kill the noise. Push one narrative and make sure the rest gets buried. And to do that, they needed a definitive statement. Something that sounded authoritative. Unshakable. Enter Mary Kay Cabot, who delivered it in the form of that now infamous claim. No Browns players support Shedeur Sanders over Dillon Gabriel. It was bold. It was sharp. And it was completely false. Thanks to G. Bush, we now know the truth. And it's not subtle. The proof he dropped, real first-hand messages from Browns players, is the kind of thing you can't argue with. DMs and texts that show not only interest in Shedeur getting a shot, but frustration that he hasn't already. That's not gossip. That's not unnamed sources. That's players breaking the silence because they've clearly lost faith in the people making decisions. And when that happens, you've got a bigger problem than quarterback controversy. You've got a leadership crisis. The team wanted control. What they got was exposure. Because once those messages came out, the illusion of a unified locker room shattered. Once fans saw the receipts, everything changed. Mary Kay's report didn't just look inaccurate, it looked deliberate. Like a calculated piece of PR designed to silence what was becoming an inconvenient conversation. And it worked, for about 5 minutes. Because now that the truth is out, the Browns can't put it back in the bottle. They can ignore it. They can deflect. They can feed media outlets their carefully crafted messaging. But none of that changes the fact that the locker room is not unified, the players are not all in on Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders does have real support. And the longer the team pretends otherwise, the worse this gets. Because this isn't just about who starts on Sunday. This is about whether the Browns are actually willing to adjust based on reality, or if they're just clinging to a narrative out of pride. Right now, it looks like pride is winning. Let's talk about what this actually says to the players. When leadership tells the media that none of them support Shedeur, even though some clearly do, they're not just ignoring internal voices. They're actively erasing them. And that's the kind of thing that turns a team sour from the inside. Because once guys realize that their opinions don't matter, that decisions are being made behind closed doors for reasons that have nothing to do with performance, they check out. Not all at once. Not publicly. But slowly. Silently. And eventually irreversibly. That's where the Browns are headed if they don't course correct, and fast. The Ravens game was already circled as a turning point. Now, it's become a high-stakes referendum. If Dillon Gabriel goes out and plays lights out, throws 3 touchdowns and leads the Browns to a statement win, maybe this all quiets down. But anything less than that, the volume turns up. If Gabriel struggles, even slightly, the frustration that's been leaking out in private DMs is going to hit the surface. Because now that the story has broken, the pressure is everywhere. On the field, in the locker room, in the stands, in the media room. And it's not just pressure to win. It's pressure to stop lying. If the Browns want to get out of this with any credibility intact, they need to do something they haven't done yet: acknowledge the truth. That means admitting the locker room isn't unified on the quarterback situation. That means admitting there's internal support for Shedeur Sanders. That means acknowledging that development doesn't happen in a vacuum, it happens on the field. In real time. With real stakes. Because this idea that Shedeur can learn while riding the bench, watching an offense that isn't producing, is nonsense. Development doesn't mean silence. It means evaluation. It means opportunity. It means letting your team grow in full view, not behind closed doors where no one can challenge the plan. The Browns don't have to name Shedeur the starter tomorrow. But they do have to show they're listening. To their players. To the fans. To the reality that's been exposed. Because this team is bleeding trust. And when you lose trust, everything else falls apart. Game plans don't land the same. Coaching loses its impact. Veteran voices go quiet. And worst of all, fans stop caring. This could have been avoided. It didn't have to turn into a full-on meltdown. But when you lie about unity, when you deny the truth your players are texting to media personalities, and when you keep doubling down even after you've been exposed, this is what you get. A fractured locker room. A frustrated fan base. And a quarterback debate that you refuse to admit existed, until it swallowed the entire season. The Browns are in too deep now. And they know it. They've crossed the threshold from internal tension to full-on public controversy, and there's no going back. The moment G. Bush dropped those screenshots, the Browns weren't just dealing with a quarterback dilemma anymore. They were caught red-handed trying to bury the truth. The truth that some of their own players don't believe in the guy they've chosen to ride with. And what did the team do in response? Nothing. Absolute silence. No walk back from Mary Kay. No clarification from coaches. No acknowledgement from the front office. Just that same tired, manufactured narrative. The team is united. Gabriel is our guy. Everything is under control. It's not under control. It hasn't been for weeks. The idea that the locker room is all in on Dillon Gabriel was never really believable to begin with, especially considering how the offense has looked. But once those private messages surfaced, the truth became undeniable. There's a real conversation happening inside the building, and it's not the one the team wants out in the open. And that's where this situation goes from frustrating to dangerous, for the locker room, the coaches, and the culture. Because this isn't just about who's QB1. This is about whether this franchise is capable of honest self-evaluation. Can they admit when something isn't working? Can they change course when players start to question the plan? Or are they so committed to protecting their original decisions that they're willing to drag the entire season down with them? So far, it looks like they're choosing the second option. Let's talk about Dillon Gabriel for a minute. He didn't ask for this drama. He didn't leak anything. He didn't make the organizational decisions. He's out there doing his best with the tools he's got. But his performance hasn't been good enough to keep this conversation buried. That's not hate. That's just the truth. And in the NFL, when your team is struggling, the most visible guy on the field, your quarterback, gets the heat. That's the job. And the problem isn't that Gabriel's had bad games. The problem is that the Browns have backed him without even acknowledging that alternatives exist. Even when their own players are pointing toward those alternatives in private. They didn't just make Gabriel the starter. They made him untouchable. And that's the exact type of thinking that creates tension in a locker room. Because when a quarterback knows he's safe no matter what, and his teammates are watching him miss open throws and stall in the red zone, that resentment builds. Quietly at first. Then it starts leaking. And when it leaks, it ends up in the inbox of a guy like G. Bush. That's where we are now. We're past the point of speculation. We're past the point of, it's just media noise. The players have spoken. Not through pressers but through the one tool they still have control over, private messages. And the only reason those messages are now public is because the team refused to acknowledge the whispers. They tried to kill the conversation before it even started. But they underestimated how smart their own locker room is, and how fed up fans are with being fed a fake version of events. Let's say it outright, Shedeur Sanders should have had a chance by now. Not because he's Deion's son. Not because of hype. But because he's earned the right to be evaluated. He's on the roster. He's been in practice. He's watched the same games we all have. And if multiple players are asking why he hasn't gotten even a single rep in real action, that's not noise. That's signal. He doesn't need to start. He doesn't need the whole playbook. He just needs a look. One drive. One half. One moment to see if what his teammates are saying privately might actually be real. And if it's not, fine. At least you know. At least you showed the locker room that performance and evaluation still matter. But that's not what the Browns are doing. They're staying quiet, locked in, pretending everything is normal. And it's starting to rot. Because now players know that even if they speak up, even if they go out of their way to support a teammate, they'll be erased in the press and ignored by the front office. That's not just poor communication. That's cultural malpractice. Great teams don't operate this way. They build trust from the inside out. They handle internal frustrations with honesty. They let the best player play no matter what the PR angle is. But the Browns? They're managing narratives, not talent. And it's going to cost them. If Gabriel stumbles again in the next game, and let's be real, the Ravens aren't the kind of team you get right against. The noise around Shedeur will only grow louder. Not because people want drama, but because it'll be undeniable that the plan isn't working. And when that happens and the Browns still refuse to give Shedeur a look, they won't just be stubborn, they'll be negligent. Because every snap Gabriel takes while struggling is a missed opportunity. Not just for Shedeur, but for the team, for the season, for development, for morale. This locker room has already spoken. They've taken their shot through G. Bush. And unless the Browns wake up and start listening, more voices will follow. More leaks. More doubts. More reasons for this entire operation to spiral into something much bigger than just quarterback controversy. It's no longer a matter of if this situation explodes. It's a matter of when the Browns finally face it head-on, or watch it swallow the rest of their year. Let us know where you stand. Are the Browns risking their season by ignoring their own locker room? Should Shedeur Sanders be given real reps, or are the coaches right to keep waiting? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like this if you're over the silence, share it with someone still pretending this is media-made drama, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in what's quickly becoming the Browns' most avoidable meltdown yet.